There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of three, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our mom sense and dad sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast where we navigate the complexities of modern parenting and celebrate the stories of those shaping the next generation. Today, we're diving into an issue that hits very close to home for so many parents: teen disengagement. My distinguished guests are Jenny Anderson and Rebecca Winthrop, co-authors of this insightful book, The Disengaged Teen, helping kids learn better, feel better, and live better. Jenny Anderson is an award-winning journalist, author, and speaker for over 25 years. Her work in parenting, education, and behavioral science has appeared in the New York Times, where she was on staff for a decade, and Time, The Atlantic, and Quartz, to mention a few. Rebecca Winthrop is a leading global authority on education. She is the director of the Center for Universal Education at Brookings and an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. She is a highly sought-after advisor and speaker by Parent Network, school leaders, the White House, the United Nations, and Fortune 500 companies. So this is going to be a very enlightening discourse. I am so excited to have you on, Jenny and Rebecca.
Thank you for having us. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start with your backstories. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and what inspired each of you to pursue careers that focus so deeply on education.
I'm happy to jump in. So it's Rebecca here. I grew up in rural Oregon, which was actually a pretty blissful childhood. Lots of freedom. Marijuana was the biggest industry in my town. Um, I rebelled by studying. I had 8 of my friends, my main friend group, all dropped out of school, out of high school. And as a young person, you're looking to, make yourself be a little different and have an identity. And I had a lot of extracurricular passions. And what happened is I got a scholarship to a university on the East Coast, to a good university, and it just opened me up to a very different world. And it really, truly did change my life. And I just became incredibly passionate about the role of education in changing people's life trajectories. And I've done a ton of work around the world and started doing that work right after college in Central America with women refugees who were trying to escape sexual violence. And ultimately, the thing they asked for the most was to learn how to read, because then they could be independent and go to the doctor by themselves. And that just opened for me I never looked back after that. I worked in education my whole life.
I had a very different backstory. I grew up in a suburb of Washington, D.C. I went to a very competitive, very elite private school and got rejected. This is maybe apropos and useful to some of your listeners who might be dealing with some early decision, early action letters these weeks. I got rejected from most of the colleges I hoped to go to, and I ended up choosing Colorado College. And I really think Colorado College is quite different. And you study one thing at a time in depth for 3.5 weeks. They're real education innovators. And it opened me up to so much exploring. I was suddenly curious in a way that I had never been curious. I was able to kind of connect dots in ways that I couldn't. I was able to travel for courses. They let you travel for courses because you're only taking that one class at a time. And so really that education experience opened me up tremendously to what I completely changed my identity from, I was a competitive athlete growing up, and I suddenly became a student of life and of people, and I was endlessly curious. I loved to ask questions. I loved to write, and I did really well with the deadline. And so I stumbled into journalism, which felt like the perfect career, and landed in Mexico City for almost 5 years, which I loved, and the rest was history.
That's amazing. Well, we have a lot of listeners from the DMV area where I'm from. We spoke about this offline, but I'm from Gaithersburg, Maryland. Shout out to G-Berg. So tell us the school you went to.
Sure. I went to National Cathedral School, and I will say it was an amazing school. The only challenge with the school is I really didn't feel very clever, because I was surrounded by incredibly, incredibly smart, driven kids. I was motivated, but I did not feel smart. And it was useful to get into an arena where I could really explore, spread my wings a little bit to kind of test that. But I will say one major shout out to NCS is that my 9 closest girlfriends from NCS are still 9 of my closest friends today. We see each other every year. We fly in from all corners, and they are so near and dear to me. So I really credit the school with they gave us the skills to really go do the thing we wanted to do. We've all pursued, I think, the thing that we wanted to do in the world fearlessly, and failed plenty of times along the way. But it was a special place.
Yes, that's wonderful. And, I want to just shed light on a quote that President Barack Obama shared. You can judge a nation and how successful it will be based on how it treats its women and girls. And that's something that, I think we all see rings true. And, I wanted to highlight your work, Rebecca, because you've done extensive work in policy and advocacy and co-wrote the book What Works in Girls Education, along with Jane B. Sperling, and the foreword was written by Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai. So you have really been, in the trenches in this field. So tell us about what you've learned and an action item that we can do, just a call to action for those who are listening, to help countries in need, and even within our own communities, help girls thrive in education.
Happily. Well, after I gave you that story of my experience working with refugee women in Central America right after college. And so I have been passionate and worked for many decades to support girls and women's education and leadership, primarily in the US, but I'm actually more worried about boys in the US, by the way.
Yeah.
Primarily in countries where they face huge, huge hurdles. So India, Sub-Saharan Africa, other parts of the world. And it one of the statistics that breaks my heart, in India, 50% of girls don't want to be girls. So there are places in the world where they just need all society to come in and support them. And what can you do? I mean, there's a huge number of organizations around the world who work with women and girls. We have a bunch on our website. We have an entire team at the Brookings Institution. I run the Center for Universal Education, that works on supporting change makers around the world in far-flung places, because they are often very lonely. It's very hard to champion girls' education in some of these communities, and we bring them together in a network. It's called the Echidna Scholars Network. So log in, support there. And the one issue that our 40 change makers in different countries have said they most want to focus on is giving girls agency.
That's wonderful. And I'm so glad that you gave us, concrete resources and organizations to be a part of, because I listened to another interview that you did where you said that, so many people want to get involved, but it's kind of like a kid's soccer game where everyone just kind of hovers over the ball. And it's like, you got to spread out and do different things in order to actually make an impact. And Jenny, starting with you, tell us about your parenthood journey and how becoming a mom, changed how you show up in the world and, in your work.
It changed everything completely. I mean, I was covering Wall Street, finance, private equity, hedge funds, and I loved it. It was a great world, super high octane, very male, very competitive. I had great colleagues at the New York Times, and I just loved the work. Very fast paced, and a couple things happened. I had my kids, and my brother was diagnosed with cancer and later died. And I think I just really had this moment, those two events side by side. I just had this moment of like, whoa, what is the
Yeah.
stuff that matters? And how do I make sure I spend my time doing more of that? And I love writing and reporting. And it struck me that there wasn't a huge amount out there around education and learning that was like more about the experience of being a parent and of parenting. This is a long time ago. There is now, and I think things have changed a lot. But I think it slowed me down, which I really needed. Parenting slowed me down. I was definitely super in love with my kids from the start, just in that super corny way, but like I came to parenting very late. I was 37. And so I was ready for it, and I loved them, and I was excited for it. But I was also very cerebral in the sense that I kind of wanted to do it, quote unquote, right. I mean, hell knows what that means. But anyways, I was very attuned to that. I had 8 nieces and nephews by the time my kids were born. So I'd had a lot of time with kids in my family. But it really just tuned me into what incredible, curious sponges, explorers every kid is, and wanting to do as much as I could to make them carry that into the world. I really kind of was so excited by their affection for the world. And you can see as kids get older that changes. And I thought, does that have to be the case? So I think that's
Yes.
kind of how I got to this work.
That's incredible. And Rebecca, what about you? You have two boys, and so much of your advocacy work is, um, you know, kind of setting the stage for girls to show up in leadership roles. But raising boys at home, we can't forget about them. So
Absolutely.
how has that changed? And I think of this often because I actually have boy girl twins, and I feel like whatever I want to push for Suhana, I have to have that same rigor for Krish.
Yeah. And you, on one of your podcasts, had this great line where you said, often we say the future is female, and you're like, I'm not sure I can get behind that. And
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. When my son was 6, I had done 6 or 7, I'd done this massive study on girls' education around the world, in the developing world, and was, telling him about it, and was going to do a massive presentation and a big launch. And he said, well, Mom, what about the boys? And
Yeah,
I
right.
was like, I know I care about the boys too, but let me tell you. And then it really made me think. And then that combined with just a lot of lessons learned from the gender equality girls education community that we are learning here in the US too, which is any movement for social change has to be inclusive. So we have to bring our boys and our men along with us to lift up girls. Otherwise, there's going to be backlash, and there is in many communities. I was working in a West Africa community long ago where there was really severe marginalization of girls. And the minute we started this heavy intervention to support girls' education, the boys in the high school went and targeted the smartest girls to get them pregnant. So they would drop out. So that combined with my son, and so I've looked at a lot of the statistics, and I'm more worried about boys in the US than I am girls. But that doesn't mean I don't care about girls too. We need both, and they need different things. And so for me, raising boys, and I had a sister, has been super fun. It's been a whole new foray into, a world that I didn't really have growing up. And actually, they inspired me to search out Jenny to write this book, believe it or not, because in COVID, I thought I had nailed which boy was super engaged in school and which one wasn't. And then I realized, even as a global ed expert, I got it wrong. So if I can't figure it out, how can we help other parents really see how engaged their kids are? And I went searching for Jenny, my favorite ed journalist, to see if she'd write the book with me. So they've
Oh,
changed my life drastically, let me tell you.
yes, that's incredible. That's incredible. And I'm so happy that you two joined forces to write this, because this is really, really going to start a movement for parents. And I want to dive into that deeper. But in an IG Live, you shared that 75% of students in third grade are engaged in school, but by 10th grade, there is a dramatic drop off and it becomes 25%. And this is also indicative in the Jenkins curve. I learned a little bit about it. So it was coined by educator Lee Jenkins. And it's basically a graph that shows the decline of students' enthusiasm for school as they progress through their education. And I mean, even my kids will ask me, like, how many years are there? And I'm like, well, there's 12, like 16.
We
And
got a
then
long way
plus,
to go, baby.
yeah, yeah, add on daycare, a few more, like pre-K 3, 4. So it's a lot of schooling.
Yeah.
And this reflects in the standardized test scores as well. And you open this up in the intro with PISA,
Mhm.
Program for International Student Assessment. And even those rates are plummeting. Test scores in math, science, and reading, there is this dramatic fall off rate. And so, if you can just kind of explain through your research and findings, why is this level of interest in students and what they're really able to retain as far as curriculum just declining?
So kids have actually been disengaged by age, as you've indicated, for a really long time. That is not what's new. By the way, that doesn't make it okay in any way. Like,
Yeah.
we can do better, and that should not be the case. But I think the question is, why has it gotten so much worse? And it's gotten so much worse because kids see what's outside in the world now. And that's in part because of technology, in part because of the way the world works right now. They can see what the world is demanding of them, they feel what the world is demanding of them, and the gap between what they're doing in school and what is happening outside is a chasm now. It is so much bigger than it used to be. And they see that and they feel that, and they feel deeply unprepared and apathetic at the same time. We say this in the beginning of the book. It's a remarkable feat, and a very, very alarming one, that we have managed to both bore kids and make them feel overwhelmed at the same time. Like, that is just a hard feat. And so I think this sort of relevance and gap between the two is a big piece of it.
Yes, yes. And, in the book, you outline 4 modes of engagement. And I love how you just break this down because I think when you get down to the granular, we have to understand it at that level. So tell us about these 4 modes.
Sure. So we have 4 modes. They are passenger, achiever, resistor, explorer. The names are fairly straightforward, but I'll tell you about them. Uh, Passengers are kids who operate as quiet quitters in school. They participate physically, but they've dropped out of learning. They're coasting, doing the bare minimum. Achievers are kids who operate in a mode where they want to knock it out of the park on every single thing, academically, in extracurriculars, and they can be very happy and very successful. So then on the other end of the spectrum, you have kids in resistor mode. They actually are pretty self-aware. They know things aren't working for them. They're troublemakers, quote unquote. I say that. So they might be disrupting class, skipping school, not doing homework, like causing problems at home. All of these, we found in our research, all of these are signals that kids are sending to us, parents and teachers, that something is wrong. They're a cry for help. And we
Yeah.
really have to see it that way. We don't have to let them off the hook. We can, make sure that they know proper norms of how to behave. That's part of our job. But we have to see it as a cry for help. They are using what little power they have in their lives to tell us this isn't working for me. Um, and they often, if you pay attention, we found this many times, and if you shift sort of their learning environment in particular, they can often skip quickly to explorer mode,
Mhm.
which is actually where kids get the best grades and they're happier and they're being prepared for the future with a world of AI. So this is where kids are self-aware, exploring their interests, and have opportunity to try to do some of those things.
So I would say I definitely was an achiever. I was always chasing the gold star. I had to be an SGA, the National Honor Society, great at, didn't do athletics as much, but dance. And I feel like it was so extrinsically focused. If I didn't get the A, if I didn't, just like achieve truly, I felt completely depleted. And one really, really telling sign for this was, oh my goodness, it was in a math class that I took for pre-algebra. And remember our TI-83 calculators?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I had written myself some notes and I got caught cheating from
Oh,
my math teacher, Mrs. Matthews. Oh, and that was just like really pivotal moment for me because I realized that, the straight A's, the A isn't worth it. And, I shouldn't do things against my moral compass to get that. So I
yeah.
think, we
You
all
are
have our
not
own
the only
story.
one.
Yeah, it's a
Cheating
very
is
common
rampant for kids
problem
in
with
achiever mode.
yeah.
Rampant.
Yes, yes. And I think it was a blessing I got caught, honestly. What are some telltale signs of the achiever and passenger and resistor and explorer with teens? Like, what are some of the things they say that parents can look for, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I can kind of classify you."
Yeah. So I'm going to clarify right now that we're not trying to classify kids as much as we are trying
Okay,
to notice where they are so that we can help them if they get stuck. I don't mean that in a critical way. I just mean one of our greatest fears in writing this book is that people use these modes to pigeonhole kids. I have
true.
my kid is, and we actually believe and we know from the evidence and we see all the time that kids just move in and out of these modes all the time. So let me answer your question. So some of the telltale signs of an achiever. Let's start with that one. Another, I'm very familiar with this both as a parent and as a for myself. Is as Rebecca said, perfection is more important than excellence. So it is about the gold star. There's a certain fragility to that. So setbacks are not learning opportunities. They are not part of what happens when you're doing hard things. When we do hard things, we fail and we learn things and we move forward, and that is how we excel. That is not how an unhappy achiever would internalize that kind of success. They would take setback as a reflection on their character, not as a reflection on their learning journey. They would not take risks. That's another one. They're given an opportunity to do something new and interesting, and they're interested in it. Like they want to do it, but they're like, nope, I'm going to do the guaranteed thing over the possibly risky thing. So that would be another telltale sign. Passengers, the kids who kind of can't be bothered. So I'll get around to their homework when they get around to it. Have you done your homework? No. Are you going to get to your homework? Maybe. You kind of walk by the room and they're kicking their soccer ball or they're, scrolling on social media. When are you going to do your homework? When are you going to do your homework? So these are these kids, if you feel like you're nagging your kid a lot, you probably have a kid who is operating in passenger mode. That is a telltale
Right.
sign of the parent. And the kid is a sort of apathy, checked out, doing the bare minimum, coasting, often very interested in their friends, very interested maybe in some extracurriculars, but not interested in their schoolwork. Resistor mode kids are the easiest to spot. They are withdrawing, they are acting out, their behavior is at times not healthy. So you are probably, as a parent, very fearful, right? They might not be sleeping well. They might be getting a lot of disciplinary actions in school. They're in the principal's office. They're refusing to go to school. They might be, in the book, we have some cases of kids who couldn't get out of bed, who are suicidal. So this is the sort of extreme end of kids who are really, really struggling. And it comes out in very inappropriate ways. Explorer mode kids are the ones who are expressing their interests. They're telling you when you say to them, how was school? They don't say fine. And then, end the conversation. They tell you how exciting it was when they did something or something they did with a peer or a project they get to work on or this thing that they learned that was totally amazing. Like it is bubbling out of them. That is how you know
Wow.
you have an explorer mode kid. This kid will ask to do things differently. They've gotten instructions from their teacher. Will you, you need to do X, but could I do Y? So they can be, as we say in the book, grade A annoying, right? They're always trying to shape things to their interests and to their agenda a little bit, but that is in a healthy realm, within limits. It's healthy. They are trying to make things interesting for themselves in the moment, and that is literally building explore muscles.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And how do we really motivate them to get there?
Kids, when they get stuck in resistor mode, passenger mode or achiever mode, they need kind of different things and we are great helps and motivators to get unstuck and get more into explore moments. Um, so your passenger mode kid, either we found two common things: either they're kind of coasting because it's too easy or too hard, um, and or they're just totally uninterested. So anything you can do at the dinner table to connect with their learning to something they're interested in, or the real world, or stuff you find interesting, and you're curious to explore, can help sort of find that spark. So our job for passengers is to help them find that spark, and to see for kids where it's, if it's too easy, that spark will help them. But if some kids are passengers because it's too hard, they might be neurodivergent, they might have missed some key parts of their learning and it's hard to catch up, we do need to help them catch up and give them those supports. And a lot of times those supports end up being around organizational skills and study habits,
Mhm.
which some kids pick up naturally, but a lot of kids don't. And we need to help teach them that. I don't know, Jenny, why don't we alternate back and forth? So that's
Okay.
passenger. You want to do achiever?
Yes. So achiever mode kids, and you might be very familiar with this, they really need us parents to help them take the foot off the accelerator and give them permission to sleep, give them permission to watch some bad TV. Let them know that achieving all the time, if you give 100% all the time, you will burn out. It might not happen in high school. You might get to college and that's when it happens, or you might make it all the way through college and then you get to work. But we're not built for that kind of energy exertion all the time. And so the best thing we can do with kids who are stuck in achiever mode is to help them see that they matter beyond their achievements. They are not their A's, they are not their 4.0, they are not their, place on XYZ travel team. They are like your awesome kid and neighbor and brother and cousin and grandson and person. They're a person beyond all of these achievements. And you're just giving those subtle reminders in all the ways that parents are so good at doing. So it is helping them know that they matter, helping them take little risks on behalf of their learning. You have to be brave here. And this is really hard. No one wants to take a risk, especially with, college admissions looming and all this. But if you see something that they're interested in and they don't want to take the risk, encourage it. I told my daughter to not take Mandarin, which would have been the thing to do because it was going to be for her balance, and to do the thing that was like more interesting to her, right? And that was a risk to her. The Mandarin was like the safe choice because it was the achiever choice, and I was saying do the the less conventional thing. So I think taking small risks on behalf of learning, helping them, if they fail, you pick them right back up. That is part of what happens when you do brave things. When you're trying to learn something new, you will fail. Guess what? The sun will shine tomorrow. Well, maybe not if you're in Britain, but if you're anywhere else, the sun might shine tomorrow, and it'll be okay. So that's achiever.
Resistor mode is heartbreaking for a lot of parents. It can be mild, but it also can be really severe, as Jenny said earlier. And so, for all of us out there who've struggled with kids in resistor mode, and I have had my fair share, the main message is, your kids are not bad people and they will get through this. And a number of things help. One is connect before you correct, basically, which is, why are they resisting? What is it? And it can be for a bunch of reasons. We found that kids were being bullied at school, or they got completely overwhelmed and thought they could never catch up. Like, kids have their own little worlds of rationales, and we have to figure out what it is. So really getting to the bottom of it before disciplining the behavior, because it's very easy, because they're acting out, to discipline the behavior right away. You do need to do that. And we're not saying don't, but like, what is it that they're reacting to? That's like the number one thing to try to figure out. And then you can also really help kids by walking with them, holding their hand. And we found some great strategies where parents and teachers helped kids imagine a potential future self. Not what do you want to be when you grow up, but what do you want your life to be like? How do you want it to be different next year or 2 years from now? And literally walking through them, what are the steps that you think you might need to take to make that happen?
And helping them see the bit about the future possible self that I love, helping them anticipate the obstacles and helping them anticipate how they will deal with the obstacles. So maybe they don't like taking tests and they're going to have to go in and take a big test. So, what are you going to do if you get in there and you panic? What are some strategies you could deploy? Right? It's really walking through that process with them, not panicked, not alarmed, not like, what are you going to do? It's like the tone matters a lot. Like, what would be some strategies you might use? It's a very different approach, and that'll feel very differently and be internalized very differently for the kid. Like, oh, all right, there's something to draw on.
Yes, yes, 100%. One thing that I feel like, even just what brings us together is I feel like we are very um, involved, discerning parents, and I do think that, this is going to be a very, I don't know, maybe it's even a polarizing statement, but I have to say it, that the disengaged teen could be the product of a disengaged parent. And now we have so many parents who I feel, they're fubbing their kids. Fubbing means snubbing your kid because you're on your phone. And I saw this like firsthand. I had the kids stay in aftercare because I had a late meeting yesterday, and at pickup, and this is after the long school day. One of the parents who's doing the pickup was just too busy on their phone and didn't even greet their kid. And it just broke my heart. And I feel like parents, there are a lot of parents who of course are bogged down by their responsibilities with their career and just the busy day to day. There is no denying that. But I think if you're not going to show up for your kid, how can you expect it? And how could you expect it when they're teenagers, when they're really just full of themselves by that point? So, I mean, how can we galvanize those parents, who really need it?
There's this beautiful quote that attention is the greatest gift we can give to anyone. And it's from a child development standpoint, it is like biologically proven from infancy that when you look at a child and talk to them and respond to them, they coo at you, you coo back to them. They reach out to
Right.
touch you, you touch the back. It's called serve and return. It builds their brains, right?
Yes.
It is literally
Yes.
laying the foundations of neural networks in their brain because it is their language before they have language. They are building up language capacity through this serve and return. And we have to give them some attention, even when it doesn't seem like they want it. And it doesn't have to be the same kind of, it's not going to be cooing for sure. It's not going to be, surveillance and don't touch that and don't do this. Like that's what has to change. You're changing from that to respect, right? You're conveying respect to these people who are trying to be respected to form their identity. Boundaries, which really help them quite a bit. And conversation. In conversation, but they're a little egocentric, and that is totally developmentally normal. Get into their lives. And I think so many parents are like, oh, that thing they're doing is so dumb. And I have, by the way, super guilty. One of my daughters is very interested in skincare regimes. And I'm half the time I'm like, seriously, you're watching more of those videos? And then I have to stop myself and be like, okay, what are we learning? What do I need to do? What primer do I need? So much is what I need. But I think that getting interested in their lives, because that's where they are, getting interested in their friends. Oh my God, did she say that? What did she mean? Like, what's going on there? Like, are they still going out? Did they break up? Like, they get so excited by that because that's their world. So I think that's staying connected and paying attention to them so they pay attention back to you. Like, if you think you're going to be on your phone all the time and they're not going to do exactly the same thing, good luck to you. Like, vaya con Dios, because 100% you have set the model for what will be.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And as much as we think, do as I say, they're going to do as you do. So that's that's just that. Something that I've found that works for me and my kids. I have younger kids. My twins are 7, and my younger one is 6. But ever since they were little, I actually watched an Instagram reel where this person shared how there was a teenage girl in AA, and she brought her mom. And so the organizer of this meeting was like, "Oh my God, I have to get to know this mom." And so she did, and said, "How did you establish this really strong bond with your daughter that she felt comfortable enough to invite you to this and, have you be the one, help her on this journey. And she said she kept a journal. And so I have one. This is an example. This is the Mom and Me journal that my daughter
Oh,
and I have. Yep.
so
And I have one with
sweet.
my sons too. And it can be something you can purchase on Amazon. I can link it in the show notes, or just a plain journal that you keep. And a lot of times it's just doodles on the pages. My son just will draw me a Ninja Turtle, and it's cool. But yeah, I feel like having this even nonverbal
Right.
communication with kids early
It
on.
is it is dialogue.
Right.
It's just in a different
It's
space.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And so she would slip it under her pillow, and they would like have this little messaging
Back
back
and
and
forth.
forth. And she said,
Mm.
yeah, sometimes they never even address things that were written um, like in words. It was just written on the page, and we got it out, and that's that.
Anything you can do, whether it's the journal or just playing video games with I spend a lot of time playing video games with my son. The one thing I think it's important for parents to know is you don't have to, and Jenny and I, as do you, kind of all have really busy lives and busy jobs. So it's not about the amount of time, it's the quality of time. And research totally backs that up. So as you say, when you come to drop off, you may be crashing on a deadline. Put your phone in your pocket for 2 minutes. That's it. Hi, sweetie. How are you? Eye to eye. How was your day? Da-da. And as Jenny says, narrate, I've got my boss. I got to get on this call and back home from in the car, whatever.
Right.
Or like I spent, half an hour, that was it, learning how to play Mario Kart last night. And I'm
That's so
terrible. And they
fun.
laughed at me and that was hilarious. And I only got one gold coin. Um, but now I know what they're talking about. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I
Yeah.
have 2 boys and they talk about video games all the time.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was 30 minutes. That's it. That was my, I had a big deadline and we had dinner and we had, and then we did that and that was my connection.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and it's like, and that's taking risks too. I mean, I haven't played video games. It was just me and my sister. We weren't really into that growing
I
up.
know I never did too.
Yeah, it
There
was
has to be lots
Babysitters
of great
Club.
video games out there. I tell you,
Yes.
You
my
didn't even
God.
have a TV, Rebecca.
Well, I know that was yes. Jenny knows. Yeah. Not
Yeah,
only
my
did I not
dad
have
called
video
it the
games,
idiot box. He's like, "We
I
don't need
didn't have a
another idiot box."
television in my house growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's
So
true.
I
We
have to
grew
just
up.
add one thing. My daughter told me I was a baddie the other night, which is like the greatest
Oh,
compliment you can get from a teenage girl because I snap her all the time when I'm trying to find her. I snap her, and she's like, "Mom, you are
Yeah,
the only mom who knows how to snap." And by the way,
that
when I was
that's
learning,
badass.
I'm not entirely sure I've ever laughed as hard as I have discovering Snapchat. They're like AI infused, whatever they are, emojis. Like it was so
yes, they're
fun to learn
hilarious.
this with them. And now it's literally, if I text him, I hear back in like 2 days. If I snap her, I hear back in like 0.2 seconds.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah, you're just speaking their language. I think that's how you really have
Yeah,
to forge that
dialogue.
connection and relate to them. Yes, yes, yes. Now I want to go on to solutions as it comes to schools. And I do feel like there's a trifecta here. It's their education and what they're learning in school. And of course, the curriculum and what that is, and hopefully that incites some curiosity. And then the parent, it's that's the trifecta. And so I wanted to just highlight how parents can be advocates in school, and here are some stats around that. So, students with involved parents are 30% more likely to earn higher grades on standardized tests. Parental involvement is linked to 20% reduction in behavioral problems and disciplinary actions in school. And there is 15% improvement in school attendance among students whose parents are, involved. And so that's just a little overview on the impact that can make. But now tell us, like, how can parents, and especially those who have demanding jobs or those who are single parents, how can they show up and advocate for their kids in their school and education system?
I'm so glad you brought up those statistics because this is something we actually work on a lot, and with my team at Brookings. The core of it, the central heart, is when parents and teachers and school leaders have a trusting relationship with each other. That
Mm,
is the core, and when they do, kids, those schools are 10% more likely to knock it out of the park on academic outcomes, social emotional outcomes, teacher retention, right? Every good thing happens. And so it is really important for parents to be vocal, yes, but be vocal in a way that builds trust and respect. Teachers do so much and they are trapped between pressures from above and often pressures from below, from us well meaning parents who are advocating for our individual child.
Right.
When really a teacher has to care about 30 kids. Every day they care about 30 kids. You are one of 30. And so the best way really is to begin a dialogue process too. Like one of the things I always recommend are to write a letter to the teacher before school starts on the first day of school, just saying, this is who my kid is. Like
Oh, wow.
this is what they love. These are their hobbies. This is their strengths. This is their weakness. This is what I'm working on. If there's anything I can reinforce that you see, please let me know. I'm here. I want to be a team.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And yeah, our school has that where it's like all about your kid. And any other practical tips that we have as takeaways from this book for those who are listening to this episode and are like, "Oh my goodness, I can't wait to read this." What's like the big take home for them?
All right, I'll take a first stab at this, and I'm sure we'll have big different take homes. But we talked a little bit about like infant development earlier. Like discussion is to adolescents what cuddles are to infants, like necessary for brain development. So the better the
Mm,
discussion you have, the more you can open their world, the more you can tie their learning in school to what's happening in the world. And if you need help, ask ChatGPT, ask the internet. Like I don't remember, photosynthesis. So I don't, but I can ask ChatGPT, how does photosynthesis relate to climate change? How does photosynthesis relate to, something that they care about? I can do that really, that bridge work and then, animate it. I can animate the dinner table conversation. We have this one tip, which is very practical. And when you say it, it sounds a little cringy. I have to say, when we were writing it, I was like, I don't know if I want to put this in here, but it's like prepare for dinner the way you might prepare for a meeting. That sounds like crazy tiger parenting stuff. And it's not. It's just come with a couple thought out questions because you'll get better answers. You're a journalist. You know this better than anyone. You ask a good question, you
yeah.
get a good answer sometimes. If you
Yes.
ask a bad
Yeah.
question, you're guaranteed to get a crap answer. So it's like, we don't,
Monosyllabic. Yeah.
yeah. So think a little bit, do a little digging, just see what classes they took. So you're asking an informed question. Oh, you're in science today. Are you guys still doing dissection? It's like you were communicating to them what they do in their days is worthwhile. It is noble in its own small way. And the more you can elevate that for them, the more you are like reinforcing that learning is like a very important thing.
The other sort of takeaway to that, in addition to sort of this, really the importance of discussion is, I think, support your kids' interests no matter what they are, as long as they don't hurt themselves or other people. And we as parents and schools do a great disservice for kids who start struggling academically when we take away their extracurriculars, because it is actually the one thing that might keep them engaged and give them a sense of interest, and it does spill over. Um, and the other piece is, even for motivation, student engagement, identity formation, sense of self, any interest that your kid likes and picks is equally worthy. So crocheting is equally good as Model UN. Jenny was always like, "Oh, come on," but um, it is
I
for
was like, good luck
motivation.
telling that to the NCS crowd.
It is for engagement and skill development and developing learning, being an independent learner.
No, I love that. I think, yeah, and it's, our kids are their own independent thinkers. And if we're really trying to inculcate curiosity, then let them be curious and don't give them, these limitations with that then. That's great. And then just to bring it back home, back to the two of you, I love asking my guests this. So, what was one moment where you really trusted your mom sense? And, as you know, that's our intuition, it's our North Star. So, what was a mom sense moment for the two of you?
Have one, which is, my younger son really, really struggled in third grade first, second, and third grade. He was dyslexic, undiagnosed, and really struggled in school and thought he was dumb. And I remember, walking into the bathroom one day, and he was curled up in the fetal position crying. And I thought, oh no, I've got to do something drastic. We have to probably move schools. Like we have to get serious intervention.
Yeah.
And so that was the moment of what, Rebecca, it's been sort of a slow burn. He's been seeming unhappy and more withdrawn and more withdrawn. And then it was like, nope, there's something really bad here. And then I
Right.
was just full, testing and talking to the principal and this, that, and the other, because he was never disruptive. So the teachers thought he
Mm.
was fine. He was fine and he'll catch up.
Yeah.
And
But
I
you
was like,
knew
nope,
your
he
gut
is
told you
not
something
fine.
else. Yeah.
He's not fine. Yeah, now he's fine. Now he's great. But yeah.
That's great. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you listened to yourself.
Mine's kind of related to health and to learning. My daughter in sixth grade started fainting a lot and having what seemed like panic attacks, and we kind of did everything we could to try to figure out what it was. And she was diagnosed with ADHD, and everyone was like, "That's it. We've gotten to the bottom of it." And I was like, "I don't think so. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't think so." When the health system is very good in every country, of sort of saying "Okay, done, move on," And I did reach out to her school, and I formed a good relationship with a bunch of her teachers and stayed in really close contact. And they started helping me piece together some stuff that was happening at school and ways she was acting. And I just kept pushing for the medical testing. And it turned out that she's celiac, so her body was actually really suffering. And
Mhm.
once we got that diagnosis, but there were also some other things going on at school, which I think were leading to the panic attacks had absolutely nothing to do with the celiac. And it certainly had nothing to do with the ADHD. The
Right.
panic
Right.
attacks were related to something in school. So it was like this kind of medical mystery that popped up. And it was through, it's funny, we were talking about how important it is to communicate with parents in schools. And in the process of that sort of crisis moment, I was like, oh my God, these people are all rooting for my daughter, in the most extraordinary way. And that relationship continued. And I almost wish, how did I get to sixth grade that I waited for a crisis to really connect with them, and what they were able to shed, the light they were able to shed on me as who she was in school, which was a little bit different from who she was
Mm.
at home, was really powerful. So don't wait for the crisis moment maybe, but also just trust that the community will step up for you when you need them, and always trust your mom instinct.
Yes. Yes. It can never steer you wrong. I love that. And we can't do this alone. We can't be in silos.
Mhm.
That's just a recipe
Absolutely.
for disaster and is just not sustainable. So yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Jenny and Rebecca, for sharing your stories and your insights and this incredible book with the world. We are so excited to be in community with the two of you.
Thank you
It's
so
our
much for having
pleasure.
us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is @Kanika Chadda Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.